All right. I missed the first two moves, but we'll get to it now. We got a rare starter, certainly played by Seto, given that I expect we didn't have two as the starter. That would be a weird move order, especially if we look at the hands. Um, Now, Seto has in the past used, especially on level 9. In fact, my first familiarity ever with Seto, as we do a bunch of talking rather than analyzing the position, which is a bad move for me because in the last game I commented with Turds, I missed a same and then was completely discombobulated the rest of the game and never recombobulated. So, what you gonna do? But here we're going to get distracted again because the very first thing I ever saw of Seto was the finals of Triad Wars 6. And I had been playing on the site for a little while, and I had played some of the TT Quest, the Quest game. And then in chat, I'd started doing a bit better and like getting some games under my belt, and some people would say like, "Are you in a clan or are you interested in a clan?" And I would be like, "I'm already in a clan because I was in a quest clan." And then I wouldn't check the chat again. But one day I did, and they actually had a follow up saying that's not like actually what I mean by clans. And I was like, "Oh." And they were like, "Check out the forums and check out the IRC chat." And so I did, and I went to the forums, and I was like, "Whoa, there's so much going on here. This is so cool." It was so mind blowing and exciting for me at the time. And it was just this like world opening up, and there were all these people talking in the chats, and it was just, it was really exhilarating. Wonderful, wonderful time. And I know at that time people were already saying like TTA is dying, but to me it seems so vibrant and filled with life. And it may have been infinitely more so before that, but it was so exciting for me. Yeah, as I said, just super thrilling for me. And so I can understand why Akiyama wanted to get rid of this corner, but he really needs a good move here exactly. And I think his plan might be 922A in 3. Saying I have 5 and 7 and you don't have 5. But anyways, back to story time. So forums were so exciting, and I remember like going through them like one by one and like saving some of the reading for a future time. But eventually, I got down to the official TTA tournament section, and I opened it, and the most recent thing there, the thing that had just finished. This is mid late 2008. I don't know, maybe like August or something. It doesn't matter. Um, and I opened the Triad Wars 6 finals, and I think it was Triad Wars 6. If I'm wrong, bad job to me. But it was a three-way finals between Delial, Seto, and I think Meta, because Meta basically wins everything until he faces Delial and then he loses. And I remember looking at the game. Oh, but maybe I'm remembering this wrong because I remember like watching something. So maybe I watched and then opened the forums. I'm not sure. But I remember the finals being level 9, which may just be provably untrue, proving my memory to be bad here. Because if I go to the shrine and open Triad Wars 6, we do still have the final rule set saved. Ah, no, I'm right. Triad Wars 6, rules, same plus, same wall plus wall combo. Oh no, I'm wrong. I must be wrong. Yeah, level 6 through 10, one card from each level, no rares or semis. So I must be thinking of some other event. Um, or combining two events in my head. That's probably it. Yeah, so the plan was 922A and 3. Huh, that's a weird flip side of that card. I don't think I've ever seen the red side of that card. So I guess I'm combining two memories. One memory was the first thing I ever saw was Deli beat Seto in the finals of Triad Wars 6. And the second thing I saw was Seto playing some other event, must have been, clearly, or Seto was breaking stips. Ban Seto, clearly uh, I couldn't possibly be remembering wrong, and it must be that Seto is a dirty cheater who should have been banned way back in 2008. Um, and I remember him using Doom Train as a rare on a level 9, or a game which had level 9 as one of the rules, and him using AA rares. And I think in the Nephilim finals, he used an AA rare against me. And so I know he really likes the AA rares. And the first kind of stylistic thing I really got from him was after this was his strength with weak corners, or just weak numbers sticking out, that ended up being really beneficial for him in the long term. And we've already seen some of this in this match. The game he won against Akiyama in the Open, he met a starter in 2 with a move in 7, just a weak corner in 7, and it completely controlled the shape of the game in a way you just don't see people do with weak cards in that way. It's really cool to watch. Um, but I think AA corners sort of give him the best of both worlds, is he has weak numbers to work with and he has strong numbers to work with. And he tends to get more out of two-directional cards than I think a lot of players do. I often really try for tri-directional dynamic cards, and Seto certainly runs a lot of dynamic cards. If you give him like level 5 sets, he's a lot more likely to run 7-6-5-4s, or like that kind of card, where he doesn't necessarily take the highest power and will run like 8-7-6-5s and stuff like that, and will run these highly dynamic cards. But on levels where he is given a choice between 2 or 3 directional, he is running 9-8-2-8 here, but most of his hand is very two directional cards. And I think he is very, very good at handling those cards where he can use strength as well as weakness. But of course, he runs a lot of dynamic cards on other sets and is very good at running that middle ground. So I'm not quite sure what I'm saying, but I think he tends to be a little polarized. There are levels where he will run heavily dynamic, and there are levels where he will run two directional power cards. Akiyama, on the other hand, is running a significantly more dynamic hand. We see a 9-8-4-4 in both hand, we see a 9-8-2-2 versus a 9-8-3-3, but we see Akiyama running 7-6-7-6 and a tri-directional card in 8-1-9-9. This is a little more to my taste, but that is in no way saying that is better. I think the options go happily each way, and Seto is so good at running these two-directional cards. But I think there's sort of 3 ways that cards can be good. It's like having a big max corner, having those big 2 directions. And the upside of those cards sometimes is the backside is really weak, and that can actually be useful. Again, Seto's so good at this. Having tri-directional cards that have significantly more potential to be an endgame sweeper, because they can hit 2 directions, but the opponent doesn't have a way to dodge. And if 6 and 9 are the last 2 squares, maybe 8-1-9-9 sweeps anything in 6 from 9, but it also, you can't dodge its power by going in 9 and having it just face away, because it is a strong number the other way as well. Of course, tri-directional cards have to take more work to set up because they have slightly less strong peak numbers, and so they need a little more setup, but they have a little more potential to do certain kinds of sweeping. Okay. So the obvious move to check is Titan in 5. Sorry, I've done no analysis on this game. That will put Akiyama up 6-4. If Seto plays 4-4-9A in 6, he flips a few things back, but he gets comboed. And he loses. If he plays 9-8-2-8 in 6, he goes up 6-4, and Akiyama can play 7-6-7-6, or actually 9-8-4-4, unless I'm being really stupid, in 9, and Eden doesn't take anything. Again, it's a 2-directional card, not a 3-directional. It can be easy to dodge in those endgames. Which means I personally find it hard to win games with all 2-directional cards, because I'm not very good at setting them up to sweep. There are other players, Seto is one of them. I think Turds is also very good at this. who are better at using two-directional cards as finishers to end the game, while I tend to need something that is either three-directional or my fourth category, which is more dynamic cards like 7676 or 8765s or 8764s, stuff that just has a lot of combo potential and can sweep in various configurations. But is not as good defensively. You can't have these high numbers sticking out. One of the interesting things that just putting a lot of level 10 hands into the solver against each other did, kind of running a matrix of from move one with this starter, how many ties and how many losses does the defending side have? Or against a really bad hand, how many wins does the defending side have? I should probably say a bad starter as well as a bad hand. But running these matrices against each other and looking at which hands had more chances to win on first turn and which hands had better chances to hold on second turn, something I noticed, and this was specifically on level 10, but I think it probably holds up on other levels, was dynamic cards play better on first turn, and it is easier to defend on second turn if you have high numbers. So, you know, and I always liked 8764s a lot more than like 88 corners, 8842s or 43 or whatever. Whatever 88 corner you want, I always liked 8764s way more. And I think on level 7, 8764s probably are a little better. But I bet if you ran a bunch of simulations on this, you would find that hands that, had a couple 8-8s versus hands that had a couple 8-7-6-4s and otherwise were similar, that the 8-8 hands might actually be more likely to hold the tie easily on second turn. And, okay, so we got a slightly different move order than I said. Akiyama did presumably play 5 first, and Seto went in 8, leaving 9-8-2-8 as his sweeper. Akiyama blocked 6, and we have a tie. This looks to me like a well-played tie. I was a little worried about Akiyama's move in 2, but I like the follow-up in 3, saying, I have 5 and you don't. And in those cases, you really want to leave 5 open, and it's not the end of the world to have this vulnerable card in 3. And there were a lot of defenses against ways to attack it. Looks like a reasonable game from both sides, and one also that was relatively straightforward, such that we didn't lose that much by me going into story time the whole game, except that you had to suffer through me telling stories poorly, so, there was suffering here, but probably not too substantial. Yeah. I don't feel much need to check this game with the solver because I don't think there are too many questions about it. And also, maybe I'm just kind of full of shit. No. Akiyama's hand has more non-two-directional cards because it has the 7-6-7-6. I was thinking one is the 8-1-9-9, one is the 9-8-2-8. Those are both tri-directional cards. Why was I saying there's a difference in the hands? But 7-6-7-6 makes a substantial difference. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the starter in 1. Akiyama got rid of it immediately. He basically said, Seto has a straightforward game plan. His 4-9-9-4, he just holds on to no matter what, and he plays it next to Zerace, I think that's Zerace, on his final turn, no matter what, and because it has high power facing out, it has likelihood to take other stuff, so even if I do flip Zerace, it will combo me to hell, and if I don't flip Zerace, it will still, Seto is not hurt by holding on to this card, because he doesn't mind having this as the final card that lands in 2 or 4. And so saying, I think I can get rid of this, just get these 2 things out of the game while setting something up that I have and my opponent doesn't, specifically when I play in 2. I force action where I have 5 and Seto doesn't. So I think this all makes sense. I haven't thought too much, or if I have, it was like a decade ago and I don't remember it, or I guess more than that now, say 15 years ago, and I do not remember it, but I don't know what I think the default best reply is to a rare starter that you do have covered. Do you want to take it and get rid of it if you can find some advantageous path to doing so? Like Akiyama sets up 5 here, he has something in the position Seto doesn't, and he gets rid of what he considers a problem. Or is it better to leave it on the board? And for instance, set up things you might have around it that they don't. For instance, if you played, say, 922A and 3 first, and Seto holds 4994 for final turn, 4994 is not going to hit as well in 2 because it's not safe to 3. I mean, it doesn't take 3. And so maybe you could play to set up stuff that takes advantage of the limitations of one of the cards there. That Seto is kind of locked into 4994. Can you play against it? I'm trying to remember what happened in the Nephilim finals game I played for Seto, where I think he started an AA corner in 3. And I think I played an adjacent corner in 1 of 1 or 9. Maybe 1. I think 1. Giving me one direction but not the other. And then he found a move in 9. And then I started flipping stuff, and he flipped back, and it all ended up in a tie. So I'm not sure I showed anything particularly convincing or desirable, but I think I got some advantage against it. Like, I think on move 5, he had one move to tie. And actually, maybe his move on move 3 was losing, but I didn't find the win. So I think maybe that game showed a possible path, but this game certainly showed a reasonable path as well. But I don't think I executed that path perfectly. I don't remember exactly now. But I do think there's a case for adjacent corners. But also, notably in that game and in this one, we both felt the need to flip it early and not let it last into the end game, which I think is just a really important thing. Of if you think a square or a setup is bad for you, you want to resolve it earlier. You don't want it to resolve late when you will have no time to recover the damage. Okay, presumably they're going to play again soon, but I'm going to pause the video until they do. Or maybe we'll end the video, start a new one. I think that's what we'll do. The series is currently tied 1-1. It all comes down to this open-closed game.